Hi guys, well, welcome to the 13th week of lockdown update video, what I'm up to in the shack. Yeah, the 13th weekend, unlucky for some, hopefully not for any of you or me. This last week I've been testing my G5 RV because on the Harwell Amateur Radio Society Friday Night Sked last Friday, not yesterday, a week yesterday, I had a bit of a nightmare with it. When we QSY'd from top band, where I was heard very well, S9 plus 10 mostly, on 80 meters, almost nobody could hear me at all, or not very well, and I immediately started as soon as the sked was over, I sort of rematched it and started doing FT8 on 80 meters with it, and that was all fine, perfect in terms of what I would expect to see in terms of, you know, how far my signal was propagating on that band. I tested it on FT8 on 40 and 20 meters, so I knew that fundamentally there was didn't seem to be anything wrong with the antenna, and in the end I put it down to sort of finger trouble, really, just a bad match, and there wasn't really any other option to consider. I mean, I did check the connections. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a balanced antenna. It just sits there. It doesn't require or rely upon an earth. So, you know, I wasn't sure really what had gone wrong. But anyway, so this week I tested it, and then last Sunday I tested it on SSB, and I worked a couple of stations in Germany very quickly on Sunday morning, and one of them copied me S9 plus 10, the other copied me S9 plus 20 with 50 watts, so that kind of sort of confirmed that it was all okay. And so that kind of then made me think, well, the radio's obviously okay, the antenna's okay, the matching unit must be okay, but why did I, you know, why for whatever reason did I struggle to get a match on it? So I started thinking about the matching unit itself, and that matching unit is, well, I'll show it you, is an MFJ 948, and there it is. And so while we were sort of talking about this, we have a sked on a Wednesday as well, which I sometimes aren't able to attend, but I did this Wednesday, and the guy, you know, I was describing the operation of this 948 matching unit. Now, these matching units obviously are designed sort of primarily for matching antennas to transmitting systems to minimize the standing wave ratio, SWR. But they're also very useful if you've got a long wire or a piece of wire that you want to sort of match to a receiving system. It's not as important, obviously, but they're still useful piece of equipment to have. And to all intents and purposes, this is an older version, I'm guessing, of my other matching unit, which is a 949E. Now, bar a few kind of aesthetics differences in aesthetics, they're basically the same. Now, and what I have found is that to find a match on this unit, on the 948, it's just a bit more sensitive and a bit more difficult than finding a match on the 949E. With the 949E, well, one of the guys yesterday said to me he's got one of these and he's never had an antenna he couldn't match on it, and I think he's right about that. That's the same for me. But finding a match on this unit, and then kind of, you know, trimming it down until, you know, when you transmit, you've basically, the reflected power needle basically doesn't move at all, is way easier, seems way easier than with the 948. You can do it with the 948, but you've only got to breathe on this particular unit, and it seems the reflective power meter is moving, and, you know, if you touch the, you know, you're adding probably capacitance if you touch the antenna or the transmit pots, you know, just by putting your hand on, touching it with your finger without moving it, you know, the reflected needle, reflected power needle is moving. So it just, the whole thing just seems a bit more sort of sensitive. And so one of the guys on the call basically said, well, what you need to do is take the lid off it and then check it for carbonization, you know, because if you sort of go a bit too, you know, if you use too much power on a tuner that's not very well, on an antenna that's not very well matched, or the matching unit's having to work very hard to find a match, the limit in terms of how much power you can use before it starts arcing reduces, and so he basically told me, he said, take it off, look for carbonisation, check for dry joints, in the soldered joints, and even get the soldering iron out and run some solder over the joints just to make sure. So I'm going to do that. I did take the lid off it very quickly, and then and it kind of looks okay, but I think I'm going to rerun some of the soldered joints. It might be one thing I do think that's happening in there is that these are they're not pots, they're capacitors, multiple gang air type capacitors, so sort of thing that you would put in a crystal radio. And I'm pretty sure on the antenna you can just hear where two of the plates might be touching on the antenna capacitor. So I don't know whether that's what's causing the problem or not, but definitely one of the plates, you can just you can't see it, and even with my glass on you can't see anything, but you can just kind of hear a sort of rubbing, metallic, sort of very, very slight metallic rubbing noise. So so maybe that's it, but if that is what is causing the problem, I'm not sure I'm going to fix it other than replace it, but I'm going to take another look anyway, and run a solder through the joints on inside it, just to be sure. But in saying all that, like I said, it is actually working. You can match an antenna on it. I matched the G5RV on it properly after the sked last Friday, but it's just a little bit more sensitive than the 949E, which has a sort of very sort of positive response. So so yeah, that's one thing I'm going to be doing this weekend. The other thing I've sort of done, I was up very early this morning, about 3:30 I got up, because obviously today is the sort of summer solstice, and I thought it would be really cool to try and record some transatlantic DX on the morning of the day of the summer solstice. Now the solstice isn't actually until about 10:40, I think it's 10:42 this evening. But I did think it would be quite cool to see if it was possible to hear transatlantic medium wave signals on the morning or around dawn on the morning of the summer solstice. So being a crazy radio geek, that's what I did this morning. And although it took me, I've got 3 videos basically that I've uploaded, which I'm going to publish probably tomorrow or Monday, because I've got to publish this video. But basically, I did manage it. Now, what I did was I set up the ELAD in the living room. I think as I described last week, and I basically plugged the computer, the laptop running it, into the HDMI port on my TV in the living room, and I routed the audio from the computer through my hi-fi component system, and so as effectively I was able to kind of like sit on the sofa and sort of record any signals. Obviously I had to sort of like get on the floor and when it came to sort of tuning around, but with the laptop. But I started doing that before dawn, and then over a period of about an hour, I made 3 videos about sort of 10 or 12 minutes long, and I did manage to copy some transatlantic DX on the morning of the day of the summer solstice, which I thought was pretty cool. And you guys will get a chance to decide whether you think it's cool or not, because I've uploaded the videos and I'm going to publish them after I've published this video. So so there you go. Interesting with the ELAD really, because I really want an ICOM IC7300, and as you guys know, some of you know, I bought this radio about 4.5 years ago, and I bought it because at the time it was probably, with the Perseus, it was probably the best SDR receiver on the market, and that is probably arguably still the case, but you can buy receivers now from SDR Play that I believe are as good as this, for about 20% or 25% of what one of these costs. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a very, very well engineered receiver. It's a sort of bit of a work of art, really, isn't it? But in terms of what I'm using it for, I've got other radios that will do exactly the same thing, and will do them just as well. But and because I do really want an ICOM IC7300, selling this little beauty would go some way to covering the cost of that. At least it would be a decent, significant fraction of it anyway. But whether I'm actually going to do that or not, I don't know, because I've sold radios in the past and sort of regretted it. So, anyway, you know, I just thought I'd make that comment because I don't need that radio anymore as such, because I've got other radios that do the same thing. Interesting, actually, Greg, Ham and Shortwave radio guy on YouTube, he said to me, you know, yeah, it might be good radio, but it'll be discarded to the junk bin, whereas your other stuff, your more vintage receivers like your FRG 7700s and 8800, you'll be wanting to keep them forever. And he's sort of right about that. Already I'm looking at the ELAD thinking, I want to get rid of that and buy something and get something else. But whether I do it or not, I don't know. But yeah, that was the radio I used this morning. There's a little screenshot there of the to do the video of the transatlantic signals on the morning of the day of the summer solstice, as crazy as I am. What I am doing with the ELAD, and what might save its future, at least for the time being, is I was experimenting with it a few weeks ago in standalone mode as a QRP transceiver, and I did actually work, I probably told you guys, a Russian station on 5 watts a few weeks ago. In fact, I was so proud of that QSO. I think for a while I pinned it on my Twitter feed, and it does go to show that you can work DX with very low power when conditions are right. Although to do that properly, you're going to have to wait for the next, until somewhere in the middle of the next sunspot cycle, which is obviously still a few years away. But it does go to show that QRP does work when conditions are right. And you know, I made other QSOs, other contacts on this radio as a QRP transceiver, but it is difficult. What makes it easier is if you can actually see the signals. So I then basically plug this radio back into the laptop with the FDM SW2 software, and the problem is that if you use any TX power greater than 1 watt, it would crash the program, which is not very helpful. So anyway, I was looking through YouTube the other day, and one of my subscribers is using an FDM Duo with SDR console. Now, I've used SDR console in the past, and it looked pretty good. So what I've done is I've actually downloaded and set up SDR console on one of my laptops. And what I have found, look at that, look how noisy that is. I mean, this is 80 meters during the day, and look at that big lump of noise there. But what I found is it wasn't like that last night. Is that you can use the full 5 watts TX power on the ELAD with this software, and it doesn't crash at all. It works. It's actually very, very stable. There you go. I'm just clicking the mic now. It works very, very well. Now, I haven't made a contact yet, but this weekend I'm going to carry on sort of testing that, because when you're running QRP, to be able to sort of see the band, it's just helpful to be able to see the band anyway when you're using a radio. That's why SDRs are sort of so popular, because you can visualize the signals that you're trying to listen to, that you're trying to extract any sort of modulation from. So it's just helpful. It's also helpful if you're trying to do some ham radio and the computer or the software doesn't keep crashing every time you try and transmit, which with SDR console, this is version 3.0.23. This is I think version 3 is the version that supports TX with the ELAD. Now, I might be wrong about that because I haven't used SDR console for a while, but I think this version is the version that supports transmitting. So I'm going to be experimenting with that this weekend for sure. I started actually yesterday before the Harwell Amateur Radio Friday night sked. So that'll be interesting. It's a nice bit of software actually. It's very sort of feature rich. There's there's many ways that you can adjust how you view the spectrum, the waterfall, how the scale in terms of whether you want S units or dBm. It's a really nice piece of software that I have used before, but not for quite a long time. And you know, maybe I need to upgrade my FDM SW2 software. But as I said, whenever I've tried to use the ELAD for transmitting with the computer control, which helps, it just keeps crashing. So which is not good. But so I appear to have solved that problem. And then finally, this weekend, and I've already started, is I'm going to try and do some DX with the Yaesu FRG 7700. This radio, I bought this radio in the days before I had the Welbrook Loop, I believe, if I remember rightly, because I had bought, after the first radio I bought was the Texan PL360, and then I bought the FRG 8800 from eBay, and then I can't remember whether I wanted the FRA 7700, which is a sort of preamp with telescopic, or the FRT 7700, the antenna sort of matching unit. I think it was the matching unit because back in those days I only had a long wire or a random wire that wasn't very long actually, and I wanted the matching unit to basically try and sort of improve the performance of my receiving system, which was mostly the FRG 8800 and a piece of wire. And so I wanted one of these matching units, but I couldn't find one on eBay on its own. But someone was selling this FRG 7700 with one, and so I bought the radio because I wanted the matching unit. Now I think I paid about 140 quid for the lot, and I can't remember if I bought this separately or if this also came with it. This might have come with it as well. I can't remember, but I didn't. I got a really good deal. I paid 140 quid I think for the whole lot, which was great. And I got my matching unit, which I used with my random wire at my old QTH until I managed to buy the Welbrook. And it was Matthias Sendijäger who mentioned to me that the FRG 7700 had a very good reputation for medium wave DX, and I have used it for medium wave DX. And only this morning, after I got up early to try to record some transatlantic DX on the morning of the day of the summer solstice, I flicked the switch on this, switched it on, and I recorded Grenada on 1400 kilohertz, sort of almost beautifully sort of fading away as the sort of daylight grew here in the shack. So I'm going to be using this radio this weekend, have a tune around, and if I can make some recordings. The audio on this radio is fantastic.
Pour la cérémonie du 14 juillet, il y aura quand même un petit défilé à la Concorde.
Literally brilliant.
Emmanuel Macron veut tirer l'affaire Fillon au clair. Le président a saisi le Conseil supérieur de la magistrature après les déclarations de l'ancienne chef du...
They literally just don't build them like that anymore. Amazing audio. So so I'm going to be using the FRG 7700, and that's about it really. Weekend number 13. Sort of can't quite believe it. I know that sort of some aspects of life are starting to come back to normal a little bit, which is great, but it still feels like we're a long way away from things returning to normal, absolutely. But you know, like I keep saying, if you've got a room, whatever you call it, a room, a shack, and you've got stuff in it, radios, there's always something to do. And you know, I'm very grateful. I can't even begin to imagine how bored I would have been and how much even crazier I would be than I am today without having this wonderful hobby of ours to take up some time at least. It's been great, and I extend that actually to the members of the Harwell Amateur Radio Society. They've been good companions and good friends as well throughout this, as have you guys, subscribers and friends of Oxford Shortwave Vlogs. So thank you very much. Okay, well, I think I've rambled on long enough. Thanks, everybody. Keep safe and keep well. Good DX. Have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you this time next week or maybe before. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching.